Hey, everybody, and welcome to Adapt or Perish, episode 105 The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. We'll be letting our imaginations run wild in just a moment, but first, our next episode. Get ready to have all your timbers shivered because we're taking to the high seas for a look at one of the classic adventure stories, Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. That means two things. First, there's a lot to look at. We'll be discussing the original 1883 novel and at least 6 screen adaptations produced from 1934 to 2012. Second, and more importantly, Muppets. Just to give you a preview, Muppet Treasure Island is one of Ari's favorite movies of all time, and I've still never seen it all the way through. I'm just saying, if I don't love it, I may not survive the recording. But if it's going to be our last episode, I'm sure it'll be suitably epic. That'll be out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, November 30th. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapt or Perish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adaptorperishcast.com. And with that, on with the show. Adapt or Perish, episode 105, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Hello, and welcome to Adapt or Perish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and today we're going to be talking about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Jeremy is riding high on potentially fixing a potential equipment problem that we potentially just had.
I don't know how many people have this experience where, like, a piece of technology you have, a toy, let's call them toys, your toy seems like it's broken. The first thought is, well, this is bullshit, and I'm mad. But then you think, well, I did kind of want to buy a new toy anyway, so this is fine. I thought our whole audio interface to record the show was broken.
It seemed broken.
I thought I was going to have to buy a whole new one, which was not the worst thing in the world, but then I fixed it. So, good news.
Did you fix it, or did it just start working again?
I have no idea. I don't know, but it's working now. This is great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This is one of those ones that's been on the list forever that I just put on because, like, of course, there's remakes. There's original. There's a new one. I thought it was a book or something like that.
Yeah.
But had no experience with it whatsoever. And I feel like you were the same kind of thing. What was your knowledge of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
It was something you put on the list that we were kind of saving in our back pocket for a rainy day when we needed to do a show that didn't require a lot of preparation. So here we are.
No, but what did you actually know about it?
That was what I knew about it. It was something you put on the list.
You didn't know anything about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No clue.
Like, if I said the name, you'd be like, I don't know what that is.
I'd be like, I don't know what that is.
I know nothing.
I
There's
thought it
no
was like
spot in your
something-
brain
no.
that is inhabited by anything having to do with this story.
I mean, I like that you trust me enough to believe me when I say I had no clue.
I just find that I thought this was the kind of thing that's in the culture of there's a guy who has an overactive imagination.
No, I'd never heard of it.
Like you've never heard the phrase like Mitty-esque
No.
or anything like that?
Never. I mean, I'm going to hear it immediately tomorrow because you just said it, but no, I've never heard of that.
It's just is one of those things. I thought you were more aware of this.
Wow.
I thought this was in the popular culture.
I thought you were more aware.
I thought you were more aware of this.
Listen. I'm aware of a lot of things that you're not aware of.
I know that.
I do the New York Times crossword puzzle every single day.
Wait, so I'm not allowed to be surprised when you haven't heard of something?
No, but I'm just saying
you
you're being a
know
little
more than
shitty.
I do. Anyway.
So
we're doing this. And this, I don't know, sometimes I guess, okay, in the last year, I feel like we did an episode that was delightful for us because we liked every single thing we watched. And it was Emma when we did that. This has never happened to us before,
Yeah.
I think, where we read a short story and then we watched 2 movies. And like
emphasis on the word short.
Yeah, super short. I guess I'm maybe spoiling what our opinions are of these movies.
They were... I can't.
Right.
I'm not prepared to say that I liked or disliked either of these movies.
And that's kind of why I'm having trouble saying this right now. Because sometimes we've watched movies where I've like, I don't like that. That's a shitty movie, you know?
Yeah.
And very, very occasionally I will be like, that is a bad movie. I will be willing to make that pronouncement. These movies neither of them did it for me.
Yeah. They were just baffling. Weirdly enough, both of them tonally very confusing, and I think that was
confused.
I
would say.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't want to I don't want to be prescriptive. I found it confusing.
See, that's the thing. I understood what was going on at any given time, but like I'm looking at these movies going like, you don't know what you want to be, do you?
Yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up? And the movie's like, I don't know. I'm going to be a fireman and a spaceman.
Yeah. I mean, he literally did. Okay. So take it back. Short story, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, written by
James Thurber.
Can I tell you we were getting prepared to do this and I was like, where is this story? Do I have to get it from the library? And you were like, well, it's a short story. Like it's probably on the internet, which usually short stories do tend to be. So I just Googled like Secret Life of Walter Mitty short story PDF and it popped up and I was like, well, this can't be right. This is only like 5.5 pages long. So I thought maybe it was like some kind of like summary or like Cliff's Notes. And so I literally was Googling for like a while and just kept coming up with this same version. And finally I was like, I finally found, I think, a scan of the original New Yorker publication.
Oh, from March 18th, 1939?
Yeah. And I was
did
like,
my research.
Okay. I guess this is it. I guess I was expecting, when you said short story, I was expecting, I don't know, a 40 to 50 page story.
No, I'm so sorry.
It was a 5.5 page story, which was great. It was just funny because I was like, wait, this can't possibly be right. I think probably the shortest... Oh, Where the Wild Things Are was definitely the shortest.
That's definitely the shortest
one.
one.
But this was like top 5 shortest, maybe top 3 shortest things we've ever read for the podcast. So that was a nice change.
And I feel like the thing that keeps happening, I feel like it's not often that this happens with something that's kind of geared towards adults because we've looked at a lot of kids' books where it makes sense. You're going to look at something like Fantastic Mr. Fox and you're going to think, I, Wes Anderson, need to expand it and I will make funny things and put my friend Owen Wilson in it. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense to me that you would take a kid's book and you would expand it, either add to the beginning or add to the end, whatever. Kids' books need to have that. Where the Wild Things Are, for example. This one, though, geared towards adults, and it's doing the kind of thing where, like, it's inspired by the source material, but the source material is not itself a story.
Yeah.
You know what? Let me throw something out there. If we are going to take a very reductive, we're all going to agree on a very reductive kind of definition of a story being something with a beginning, a middle, and an end, the short story is not a story.
No, it's a writing exercise.
Yes. And it is incredibly entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it, and I understand why people love it. But if you're going to adapt it, you kind of have nothing to adapt.
Yeah, it doesn't have a plot. Do you want me to describe the short story?
Go through the whole plot.
As best I can. Okay.
Try to keep it to half an hour.
I could just read it in half an hour.
Yeah.
Walter Mitty is I think we're given to understand a middle-aged, sort of like down at heel, sad sack gentleman.
I think we're given to understand that he is nothing.
He's nothing.
Which is why he dreams of being something.
Yes. And the action of the story from the outside is that he is driving downtown with his wife. His wife is being annoying about all the errands that she wants him to run. She's going to an appointment to get her hair done or something, and she's asked him to do all these different things, and she's complaining that he's daydreaming while she's trying to tell him things.
Which is really unfair because it's true.
And she goes to her appointment. He has a bunch more daydreams. He gets some of the things she asked him to get. He forgets some of them. He meets her at in the lobby of the hotel where they always meet at the end of the day when she has her hair appointments, and then they get in the car and go home.
No, well, it doesn't end with them going home.
Oh, okay.
Because the story ends with him waiting for her.
Yeah.
Because she's gone to do another thing.
Yeah.
And he lights a cigarette and he's standing against the wall, and then he imagines that he's in front of a firing squad.
Right.
That's how the story ends.
Right.
With him in mid daydream.
So, as I say, from the outside, that is literally what happens in the story. On the inside, what we hear in Walter Mitty's head are all these little daydreams that he's having as he drives with his wife. And they all involve him being noble and brave and romantic. Someone, a person, and they all have this like little sound effect, which is really brilliant. What is it? Tapakada, tapakada, tapakada?
Tapakada, tapakada,
Pakada, pakada, pakada. The writing is very cool because it sort of has this onomatopoeic sound effect, I guess, that ties together all of his different fantasies. I couldn't help but glimpse at your notes, and I noted that you wrote down each fantasy that he has.
There are 5 of them.
Yes.
He first dreams that he is a pilot in the U.S. Navy. I believe in the story it is a hydroplane.
Okay.
Then he is a world-famous surgeon. And
I like the surgeon the best. That one was really good.
I mean, some of the stuff that he spouts is bullshit.
Yeah.
And like wonderfully bullshit. Like that's not a knock against Thurber. Like Thurber wrote some great fake medical stuff in it. Then he is an assassin testifying in court. And then he is a Royal Air Force pilot volunteering for a suicide mission. And then the final one is, as I said, the firing squad.
Yeah.
Very big dreams this man is having.
Yeah. And it doesn't like go anywhere. We don't know anything about who he is. We sort of have a general idea that he's kind of put upon.
Which is why I think he's no one.
He's no one.
Like I actually think the story does an amazing thing of telling us who he is because he is nobody. That's the central idea.
Yeah.
He is no one because he's no one who dreams of being someone.
Right.
I'm saying this so specifically because I feel like that kind of has to drive whatever adaptations come along.
Yeah.
Or it's maybe the decision I would make if I were adapting it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say let me walk that back a little bit. I'm not saying it has to drive the adaptations, but I'm saying it could. It really, really could. It's a very strong candidate for driving an adaptation.
Yeah. You could make like a half-hour episode of an anthology show, like, your Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
It would be like Amazing Stories.
Yeah,
or
like Amazing Stories.
That,
not like The Twilight Zone, but like
right.
Amazing Stories. Alfred Hitchcock Presents sometimes has like a little bit of a twist, and it's not necessarily like sci-fi.
Yeah.
But I could just see it in that sort of black and white milieu. But that's basically it. Like it is interesting to me that in the story, like the sort of antagonist to his protagonist was clearly his wife, because she's really the only other character. But in both movies, he had a mother and a love interest. So in both of the movies were like, oh, he can't already be married at the beginning of the movie. This guy has to go on a journey and there has to be romance involved. So he can't have a wife. But he has a mother and a love interest in both of the movie versions.
Yeah. I mean, I would go a step further and say there are other characters because everyone in the world seems intent on ripping him out of whatever daydream he is in.
Sure.
Like every single daydream ends with someone yelling and going like,
hey, mister!
Hey, mister, what the fuck are you doing? Pay attention.
Yeah.
God, that's it.
That's it. I mean, that's it. Like there's no point talking longer about it. That is it. It is 5.5 pages. It is interesting. I enjoyed reading it.
It's very funny.
You could get it on the internet. It's pretty funny. I mean, James Thurber, I think, is a famous humorist, I believe.
And cartoonist as well. One thing I didn't really know about all of his comics, a lot of his cartoons tended to center around like a nothing little man whose partner is like a woman who is much larger and forceful than himself. That seems to be, I almost thought I saw something that said Thurber-esque at one point, but like, I don't want to put that down 100%.
Yeah.
But that seems to be a thing Thurber is into.
Yeah.
This kind of nothing man.
Yeah.
Which is tough because I feel like it's hard to make a long narrative about just a dude who's nothing.
Yeah.
Because we don't care about a dude who's nothing. I'm tired of a dude who is nothing. I'm tired of a mediocre man being sold to me as someone who is deserving of a 90-minute to 2-hour story about something that happens in his life.
Yeah.
And it's been given to me for many, many years.
Many years.
And
many years.
You can do it well. Like if you're good, you can do it well. But if you're not good, you just have a story about a mediocre man.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of amazing what he was able to impart in 5.5 pages, as you say. Yeah. Can I just tell you something really quickly on the subject of like your last name being used as an adjective?
Yes.
Like Shakespeare, something is Shakespearean.
Sure.
George Bernard Shaw, you know what the adjective is for Shaw?
No.
Shavian?
Shavian?
Yeah, with a V.
Okay.
And I don't know why that is. Someone will probably inform me. But it was like the best day of my life when I realized, because my last name is Lipshaw, the adjective of my last name would be Lipshavian.
Oh, well, that's super fun.
So you can say something's Lipshavian.
Oh.
Yeah.
So super literal.
Yeah.
Process-oriented, super literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly pedantic.
Okay. Maybe slightly.
Trivia-minded.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
What is Shavian, though? Like, how would you describe Shavian?
In the style of George Bernard Shaw.
No, I mean, I get that.
Oh, he had a very, like, so his wit, it's like very, very dry. It's kind of heightened, but he also had this idea about like a new alphabet. And so he wanted to spell things.
That's specific.
He wanted to spell things in ways that he thought made sense. He wanted like to write in a simplified form of English, and I think people didn't like it. But he also had this idea that he could indicate dialect phonetically in a way that you could just read dialect off the page. So if you look at the first couple pages of Pygmalion, all of Eliza's dialogue, like her Cockney dialogue, is written in this like weird semi-pigeon phonetically, like to the syllable, like as if you were just learning her Cockney dialect by the syllable and didn't necessarily speak English or weren't familiar with the dialect. And then he goes on with this for a couple pages, and then he has a little note in the text like, this is getting exhausting. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Is it like, okay, maybe someone knows what I'm talking about. In an American comic strip, what does a doggy say?
Woof woof.
In a French comic strip, what does a doggy say?
Wah wah.
Wah wah.
Wah wah.
Wah wah. My experience of that was the first time I ever saw it in front of me. I was like, that's stupid. Why would the French do it that way?
But if you actually think what a dog sounds like.
But then I actually kind of did it out loud, and I was like, oh.
A dog sounds like woof woof.
Yeah, a dog totally sounds like that. A dog also sounds like woof woof or bark bark. Like they all sound
like, stop.
They all sound like dogs. But the first time I, as like a kid, looking at this was going like, that's bullshit. Well, wait a second. That's actually just as accurate as woof woof.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what Shaw was doing with the Pygmalion, with the Cockney?
Yeah, I guess.
Like,
it was just like
works.
He wanted to write English in a way that would be readable to anyone. You know, like Esperanto? Like,
sure, yeah.
That it's like a simplified language that you can just... Okay, so you know how in Italian, there are no like silent letters. The vowels are always pronounced the same. It's like a really easy language supposedly to learn because there aren't any weird rules.
I wasn't aware of that.
And English is like basically the opposite of that. He wanted English to be more like Esperanto or a language like that, and he was trying to popularize a simplified form of spelling, but it didn't take.
Yeah.
We've gotten off track, much like Walter Mitty.
That's okay. I was just imagining myself as someone who knows about language. No, I guess I do want to say this before we move on, that like to me, the thing that I've talked about a lot of times on this show, I think is really worth digging into for at least a moment on this show, which is building empathy.
Yeah.
And it's something I look for in stories. I really like when a story or a TV show or a movie actually manages to make me build some empathy with the main characters.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I won't like something if I don't have empathy for the main characters, but it tends to help. And I feel like this story, even though it doesn't, have a beginning and a middle and an end, like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
But I certainly have a lot of empathy for this guy because it's very honest about the kind of things that go through our heads. And I may not have the exact same fantasies that this guy does, but like everyone has dreamed of being a different person.
Yeah.
Someone more knowledgeable, more exciting, someone better.
Yeah.
Like I assume everyone has had some degree of that at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you already like think you're the most amazing person ever.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're going to get into our personal daydreams. I don't necessarily dream of being a different person.
I'll tell you what I talked to my therapist about last week if you tell me what you talked to your therapist about last week.
I've mentioned several times on the podcast what I talk to my therapist about, so that's fine. I don't necessarily have those like daydreams about being a different person or a more successful person or anything like that. It's more like, if this thing happened, watch me do the perfect thing. Watch me know the perfect thing to say.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense? But it's still me. It's just me at my best. Does that make sense?
No, but that still is part of it.
Yeah.
That still is part of it.
I know. Or it's more like, God, I just hope that this person I've had a conflict with gets in my face in a way that we can really have it out, and I'll just make them feel so small.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I wish that my personal antagonist would say one of these 5 exact things because then I know the exact thing to say to one of those 5 things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everyone will be on my side. They'll do it publicly. They'll look so stupid.
Yeah, everyone will applaud. They'll carry you out on their shoulders.
Yeah.
It'll be a whole thing.
It'll be a whole thing.
Yeah.
And everyone will be like, you did great.
Here's the thing. I empathize with that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. I do think that the character of Walter Mitty, even if who he is in real life is not someone I necessarily empathize that much with, the fact that I see his inner life does build empathy.
Yeah.
And I give a shit about this guy. And I think it makes perfect sense that someone wanted to make a movie of this.
Yes.
So
and someone did.
Someone made a movie of this. 1947 finally got made. They'd been writing it for a couple of years. Samuel Goldwyn Sr. produced it. It was directed by Norman Z. MacLeod, who also, he directed a lot of different things, but I'm just going to call out that he directed Monkey Business and Horse Feathers because I'm a Marx Brothers fan, and those are some good Marx Brothers movies that I enjoy. It was written by Ken Englund and Everett Freeman. I want to get back maybe in a couple of minutes to the writing of it and maybe what Thurber had to say about it.
Sure.
But most famously, it stars Danny Kaye as Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people who we may or may not mention, but it's Danny Kaye as Walter Mitty. It's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's the movie that people know. It's the Danny Kaye movie that people know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you were really funny, though, because you were like, I don't think I've ever seen a Danny Kaye movie before.
Let's act this out. Hey, sweetie, would you believe that this is the first time I have ever actually watched a Danny Kaye movie?
I would not believe that.
You wouldn't?
No, you've seen White Christmas.
Shit, I'm full of shit. Please don't tell anybody that we had this conversation. This is very embarrassing. And scene. I've only ever seen 2 Danny Kaye movies.
That was what you followed up with, yes.
For a long time in my childhood, I got Danny Kaye and Donald O'Connor mixed up, so I thought I had seen Danny Kaye in Singin' in the Rain. But Danny Kaye's not in Singin' in the Rain.
No, he's much taller than Donald O'Connor.
That's Donald O'Connor. Well, you can't tell in movies.
I mean, how could you tell?
Yeah.
I feel like Danny Kaye, it strikes me from this movie. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen any other Danny Kaye movies
other than White
Christmas.
I've always heard The Court Jester is very good.
I haven't seen it.
I know you haven't.
But he strikes me as sort of the Robin Williams of his day. It just seems like you sort of just wind him up and let him go. Mm-hmm. That's what it struck me as. Like, oh, you can do this funny thing. We're going to build a whole scene around the fact that you can do this funny thing.
Yeah.
Does that track?
I mean, that from everything I've seen about how this movie got made, that absolutely tracks.
Yeah.
Because I'm convinced, and obviously people who know more about this could show me evidence to convince me otherwise, but I have a strong suspicion that this is one of those things where someone had been knocking around an outline for a while and then thought, oh, let's graft it onto The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah, because there's a whole plot. Like, it has a plot.
Yeah, and it has a plot that in a lot of ways, I'll say, has nothing to do with the central conceit of a guy who daydreams a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because, okay, so it starts off in a similar manner. It's Danny Kaye, it's Walter Mitty, and his mother, not his wife. And
it's an overbearing woman.
She's overbearing. He's put upon.
You know women.
It
was 1947.
They drive to the train station every day, and she's always giving him these errands to run. He works for sort of, what would you call it? Like a publishing company that does like exciting stories magazines.
Yeah.
Trash magazines. They have like 31 different publications, all like adventure stories, outer space stories, hospital love stories. That was a big one. I thought that one was funny. But like all these different, stories magazines.
So wait, so a guy who has a really overactive imagination and dreams of being all these different people works at a place where all he does is read amazing stories about amazing people?
Yeah, but he's put upon because like the boss is always stealing his ideas and all this stuff. And he has actually a fiance. We're not really given to understand like how she became his fiance. It seems like maybe the mothers just sort of arranged it. And so when this sort of intrigue plot started, you kind of turned to me and you're like, oh, it's interesting that what they've chosen to do is instead make it a story about a guy that's daydreaming so much that he can't even see this real intrigue that's happening around him. And it looked like that was what was going to happen for a couple minutes.
And I didn't even say that's what they were definitely doing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what they could be doing.
That would be interesting. And it did look like that's what was going to happen for a little bit. But it didn't. Like, he got fully sucked in. So he like meets this woman on a train, and she's Dutch, and she's going to meet her uncle. And there's a notebook of all the art that got hidden in World War II. And there's a guy, and it turns out the uncle is the real bad Nazi man. And they find
Nazis are never mentioned at any point in this movie. They're just the Germans.
Yeah, well, it was 1947, so I feel like maybe they didn't quite know which way things were going to go at that point.
I mean, I feel like in 1947, the Germans and the Nazis was just one thing. It was just one thing. Whereas now we have so much more history to kind of connect with all of that. Now we have to be specific about the Germans, the historical Germans we're talking about.
Right. But anyway,
because of course the Nazis are only in history.
He's a bad Nazi man.
Yeah.
And she's very pretty, and he falls in love with her.
And the whole thing about her her is that she's the lady that's in all his daydreams.
She's in all the daydreams, but that doesn't really come up.
Lead anywhere.
It doesn't do anything. It's not like he saw her.
The thing about it is like she sits down next to him in a train and he looks at her and he does this great double take because, oh my God, you're the woman I see in all of my dreams. But then she gets him immediately involved in this story of intrigue and mystery and murder.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't matter whether she looked like the woman in his dreams or not. If she looked like any other type of woman, she still would have gotten him involved in all of those different things.
Yeah.
So the fact that it happened to be the woman from his dreams, I just felt like it never connected.
Yeah, and then I was like, what? Why am I getting deja vu? What is meeting the mysterious woman on a train thing? It was the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
That happened.
But then it was a pretty normal woman meeting a very mysterious man with a dark past.
Yeah, so then he's being all chased around and they're trying to murder him.
It's just nonsense happens constantly.
He gets pushed out a window and his boss is there and...
Comedy.
Frankenstein is there.
First of all, he's Frankenstein's monster and it's Boris Karloff.
Yeah. He's there.
He's very good.
Doing stuff. And then everyone thinks he's crazy and she's been kidnapped and he's trying to find her.
Okay, so let me talk about the villain's plot for a second because it's her uncle who we think is a good guy and then it turns out he's a bad man.
Well, we think he's Dutch and it turns out he's German.
Yeah, which is, that tells you everything you need to know.
It all kind of reminded me, I don't know if anybody listens to My Dad Wrote a Porno. I assume some people do. It really reminded me of the plot of Belinda Blank once they get into the sort of international intrigue stuff with steel pots and pans and like their international competitors.
I hope someone knows what you're talking about.
And Herr Schlint or whatever his name is. Someone knows what I'm talking about.
Hopefully someone does. I know a little bit of what you speak.
It is literally the most popular podcast in the entire world.
Yeah, there is that.
Number one.
So she thinks he's Dutch. He's actually German. He's trying to find this book that has the location of all of the Dutch crown jewels. And Walter gets it, and he hides it, and they have to go find it, and then they get it, but then he hides it again, and they have to go find it. And it's just this whole thing. This was all leading somewhere. I had a point. What was my point?
What I was going to come to was it all wraps up in the end. He doesn't marry the fiance. She goes off with another dude that we meet who's really annoying, and they get married, and he's promoted, and they all live happily.
But before that, I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The villain's plan is bullshit, and let me explain. The thesis of my paper is that the villain's plan in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is bullshit. So basically, there's the villain, there's the big guy, but then he's got his two henchmen, one of whom is Boris Karloff. And they hatch a plan that what they are going to do is they are going to convince people that Walter is a crazy person and imagined this whole plot, all this intrigue. He imagined this woman, Rosalind. He imagined her because he has an overactive imagination. And the thing is, their evil plan really, really depends on them having an intimate knowledge of the fact that he is a well-known daydreamer.
Right, and they don't know that.
They don't know that. How could they possibly know that? There's no way they could know that. And so they had to make up their plan on the spot based on something that they had no prior knowledge of. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that makes no sense. Yeah. And I found it very distracting. However, I understand why that doesn't matter.
Yes.
And why that criticism is not a valid criticism, because that is not the point of this movie. The plot is not the reason that anyone in 1947 went to go see this movie. In 2 words, what is the reason everyone went to go see this movie in 1947?
Danny Kaye.
Danny and Kaye.
Danny Kaye does funny voices.
That's it. Like, there's so much stuff in this movie that bothered me because it was funny.
Yeah.
There's really funny stuff that has nothing to do with anything.
Well, there's a couple songs, which was kind of weird.
Well,
it's not a musical.
No,
but
it's Danny Kaye, so we gotta have him sing some stuff.
Like he did the whole thing. There was like a 10-minute sequence where as one of his daydreams. Yeah.
So this is something that was from the original story because he's like a Royal Air Force pilot.
Yeah, his British accent's really, really good, by the way.
It's very good.
Yeah.
What is it? Received pronunciation?
Yeah. He does this like very good RP.
Mm-hmm. So it's a scene where he has just flown a mission, killed a Nazi. Actually, no, there's swastikas in it.
Yeah,
so we know they're there.
He killed a Nazi.
And he goes into the bar afterwards, and there's all the other RAF pilots there, one of whom is Robert Altman, which I didn't know.
That's fun.
He was an actor for a little bit, and he's in the background. It's so cool.
That's fun.
Anyway, he's doing the story that's from the original short story, which is that he's volunteering for like a suicide mission. But then a bunch of the other pilots go, see Mitty over there? He used to do this amazing impression of our music teacher when we were in school. It was incredible, and he overhears that they're saying this, so he thinks, okay, I'll do the impression of the Czechoslovakian
to make the boys laugh.
Yeah, and then he just becomes a different character. This like very, very proper British Air Force pilot suddenly becomes Danny Kaye doing an impression of a comical Czechoslovakian conductor.
Yes.
Going through a whole.
And it's a
symphony.
very long scene. Like, I cannot emphasize enough. It was like 10 minutes long.
It's Danny Kaye at his best.
Yeah.
He's doing amazing stuff. It's very funny and very good.
And very random.
It is completely disconnected from everything. And in fact, you could totally cut it out of the movie and the movie wouldn't change.
Well,
because there's literally, he goes back to being the Air Force pilot. He takes everything off. And then like the woman enters the scene and she says, "You're so brave." Like, you literally could have just cut the whole thing out and the plot wouldn't have changed at all.
Because that's probably the way they shot it. Like,
Yeah.
they probably just like shot up to that where he turns into the professor, then shot that little tag at the end, and then had him change and shot the professor. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Were there other like little songs? There were like 2 or 3 songs in it.
There's the one other song when he's the French hat designer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was a French hat designer for
Who's
a while.
like, he's inspired to make hats so beautiful for women because he hates women.
Yeah.
That was
the punchline.
That's the whole joke.
The punchline of the song was literally him saying, "I hate women."
Right, like it's funny, like it's a funny song, and Danny Kaye is very funny, but it has nothing to do with the plot, and it's happening right in like the third act, when stuff is really starting to get going. So multiple times they cut away from the actual plot to have him do a Danny Kaye thing.
Yeah.
And the movie's an hour and 45 minutes long, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It's this movie was like,
it could have been a tight 90.
A tight 90, or like a trim 88. Like one of those movies where you're like, it's not even 90 minutes. Did you know that Men in Black with credits is only 88 minutes?
We get so excited whenever we have the opportunity to watch something that's only 88 minutes.
88 minutes for me is just this perfect thing.
It's a perfect thing. That's what when I saw a lot of theater, like I always would say 90 minutes, no intermission. That's my perfect play.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that's what it should have been. But instead we get all this extra stuff, and I just look at it and I go, this should have been in another project. It should have been in another movie.
Yeah.
I understand it. Like, I get that the point of this is not to do a great screen version of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. The point is to do a Danny Kaye movie and present Danny Kaye to the world.
Yeah.
I get that. So if that's what it's intending to do, it succeeded. It absolutely succeeded. It is successful at doing that. I don't know that, I mean, this is spoiling it. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk later about whether it's actually successful as a movie, as an adaptation of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Because I guess my big thing is,
like, there's nothing to adapt. It's just an idea.
But like the stuff that's from the original story, the idea that he dreams of being this person never really connects to the actual plot. Like there are these things, there are these things in the plot when he and Rosalind are like running through the mansion and they're running away from the bad guys, and he starts like setting traps. He's telling her, "No, this trap worked in," and then he names one of the stories that the publisher he works for published.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 or 3 of them in a row, and like one of them kind of works, and he kind of electrocutes one of the guys.
But then one doesn't work and he gets caught in it himself.
But the thing is, he's not referencing anything that happened in his daydreams.
Right.
He's referencing things that happened
in
from his job.
Yeah.
Which is not the point of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
And I guess you could easily have him doing things that relate back to the things he was dreaming about and tie it all back together. You have the ability to do that when you're making a movie. You can kind of make up whatever you want. And they seem to be uninterested in tying any of the actual plot to his daydreams.
Yeah.
He just was a guy who wanted to be a different person. And then at the end, he like becomes violent and everyone respects him.
He did a little bit.
Is not fantastic.
It's not fantastic. And then he gets a promotion, as I said before, and he gets the girl the blonde girl, not the dark hair girl.
Yeah, even though they're both beautiful.
Even though they're both beautiful, but one has an annoying dog, so that's okay.
Yeah, everything he did
the
with
dog
the dog.
The dog was
Danny
really
Kaye's
funny.
funny throughout this movie.
Yeah, no, he's funny. Like it's a funny Danny Kaye movie. It was enjoyable, honestly. Like setting up the character was enjoyable, and I liked the daydream parts of it. I didn't like the actual plot because it was boring, I thought, and took a long time. And so I found myself getting like not invested in it, and I like almost wonder if you took the plot out and made it just kind of a plotless movie about this guy, more like the short story, if I wouldn't have liked it better.
I guess, like, I think I want to split the difference a little bit, because I feel like what I would have wanted to see is something where the outward stakes are actually kind of low.
Yeah.
But because he's such a mundane person, low stakes in real life actually represent high stakes to him.
Yeah.
Because everything he imagines is such high stakes.
Yeah.
And if he's reinterpreting reality as high stakes, that's where you get your high stakes from.
Right.
It's in his daydreams.
But but they were making the plot high stakes because like there was actually like murders and jewel thieves and art theft and all this stuff. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It was a weird balance.
Weird balance. It didn't super work for me. Also, like, it seems like he has the perfect job for himself.
Oh yeah, he's like a great job. He basically never has to work. He just kind of goes into an office and spouts out ideas every so often, and then the boss steals them. But who cares? It's your work product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who cares if the boss says that it was his idea or not?
And he gets to spend all day reading stories that he loves, apparently, that inform his daydreams. So it seems like he's got a great job.
Got a great job.
I don't know. I just made a note about, I was just going through my
if you
meager notes from
sat
this.
me down and you were like, you have to write 4 hospital love stories.
Yeah.
I would be like, that sounds amazing. Like I can only write fiction when you give me the structure.
Yeah.
Because I'm that way.
Do you remember the Western scene? Remember when he imagines a whole Western?
Yeah.
And it's like right in the third act, right in the middle of it. And it's just, they kept sacrificing momentum for daydreams.
Yeah.
But the daydreams never connect with anything.
Yeah.
It's a mess and nothing made sense.
All right.
I want to talk about what Thurber thought of this movie. I'm going to read an extended selection from an article about this that I was kind of excited about. Work on the script of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty began in January 1945 when Ken England and Everett Freeman attempted to adapt James Thurber's highly popular short story of the same name into a dramatic property. In August 1947, Life magazine published letters written by Goldwyn, who produced it, asserting that Thurber loved the film. Also published were letters by Thurber, who insisted that, in spite of his involvement in the film's production, he never fully approved Goldwyn's changes. Thurber wrote that in December of 1945, Goldwyn rejected the script the original writers offered and sent England to Thurber in order to receive his input on the storyline. The two worked on a new script for 10 days, and after that, Thurber's ideas were continually sought out and then ignored by Goldwyn. The tone of Thurber's letters suggests that he was entirely unhappy with the final project, complaining at one point that the psychiatrist scene contained, quote, a bathing girl incident which will haunt me all the days of my life. The psychiatrist scene, this is when they're trying to convince him that he's actually crazy.
Oh, yeah. And they're like...
They're doing sleight of hand and magic to make him think he's seeing things.
And then the girl comes out in her he's like, oh yeah, I saw this crazy guy the other day. He thought all the women were in bathing suits. And then he has the nurse come out in her bathing suit. And he's like,
yeah, she's in her bathing suit. He says, she was in regular nurse's clothes. What are you talking about? Also, I played Frankenstein's monster. He also recalled that Goldwyn asked him not to read part of the script as it was, quote, too, quote, blood and thirsty. I read the entire script, of course, and I was horror and struck, which is good. He also said another thing separately that I really liked, that because the whole thing was changed so much to just be a vehicle for Danny Kaye, that he said he called it privately The Public Life of Danny Kaye.
That's funny.
Which that's pretty good.
Do you remember when we did Jaws, the letter that
Always.
Peter Benchley wrote? That's what it reminds me of, but like it sounds like James Thurber was maybe a little more good humored about the whole thing. Do you remember Peter Benchley was like complained about all this stuff? It's like, why does he have a beard?
Oh yeah,
Scuba divers don't have beards. And then at the end he was like, well, thank you for, maybe you'll just throw this letter out the window, but thank you for letting me vent my spleen. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. To date, our best. It's our best episode.
Writer did the worst.
It's our best episode.
I always recommend the Jaws episode to any new listener.
It's really something special.
Yeah.
It's our first good episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So this movie was made, and people love it, and I understand.
Yeah.
Because people love Danny Kaye. I want to watch more with him because he's very funny. it makes sense to me that people would have wanted. You know something else I found out? This was crazy to me. You know Empire Magazine?
No.
They did a list. It's a magazine.
Okay.
They do like movie stuff. They did a list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. And this was on the list.
Okay.
And like even a list of 500 movies, it still surprises me that this movie would be on that list.
500 movies.
Because I feel like this is not a great movie. I feel like it's a great idea of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, when Danny Kaye did The Guy Who Has All the Daydreams, like just saying that, it sounds like it would be great. But then the actual movie itself doesn't really live up to its potential.
Yeah.
Anyway, it makes sense to me that people would have wanted to remake it for a really long time. So I want to go through this development process with you because it's a heck of a thing. As early as I can tell, this kind of started in 1994, where Samuel Goldwyn Jr. wanted to produce a remake of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1994, who's the big guy who's going to replace Danny Kaye?
Robin Williams.
In 1994?
Sure. What?
Oh, sweetie, this isn't 1985.
Oh,
this is 1994.
Who's 1994? Tom Hanks?
No.
I don't know.
Jim Carrey.
Oh, Jim Carrey. God damn it.
Yeah, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, Ace Ventura. Like, Jim Carrey was the biggest thing in the world in 1994.
Thanks, I hate it.
I loved it. And I actually think Jim Carrey would have been amazing in it.
I think it should have been Robin Williams.
You and I differ on Jim Carrey, and that's completely fine. So in 1994, Jim Carrey was attached to star for New Line Cinema. In 1997, still hadn't gotten made. Ron Howard was in talks to direct it. That didn't go through.
That would have been Tom Hanks.
Yeah, probably. Ron Howard worked with Jim Carrey in The Grinch.
There you go.
They did work together. 1999, Chuck Russell, who directed The Mask, was in talks to write and direct it.
So now Jim Carrey's back in.
No, Jim Carrey's there the whole time.
Okay.
It's always going to be a Jim Carrey movie.
I'm just making jokes.
Always. Funny jokes. In 2002, it still hadn't gotten made. The film rights left New Line and reverted back to Samuel Goldwyn Jr., who then took it to Paramount. Then in 2003, Steven Spielberg was in talks to direct it, still with Jim Carrey.
Oh, my God.
Then in 2004, he dropped out to make, like, Munich. Which, you know what, in
not
retrospect...
with Jim Carrey.
Not with Jim Carrey. In retrospect, good idea. Munich's a good movie. In 2005, Mark Waters was attached to direct it.
Very different movie, though.
He did Freaky Friday and Mean Girls.
Okay.
He was going to direct it, and finally, by 2005, Jim Carrey had to drop out.
Jim Carrey's like, it's been 11 years.
He had to do something else. So Owen...
After 11 years, he had to do something else.
He had to do something else.
What are you talking about?
He had to do something else.
He had been working steadily throughout that time.
These things are going to get made.
He got married to Jenny McCarthy. Like,
it's a whole thing.
Had a whole thing.
Okay. Was it during that time?
I don't know.
You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't even like Jim Carrey.
I don't like him.
By this point, Owen Wilson was going to replace Jim Carrey. And then he dropped out later that year. And then the whole thing, it was literally, it had to shoot by a certain date because if it wasn't in production by a certain date, Paramount would lose the rights to it.
Oh, my God.
And Owen Wilson dropped out like right before that date. And so they couldn't shoot. He dropped out 2007. Mike Myers was attached to star in it.
So did Paramount lose the rights to it?
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
2010, well, because it was produced by 20th Century Fox eventually. 2010, the lead role was finally accepted by Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, my God. Oh, that would have been terrible.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Gore Verbinski was going to direct it.
Who's Gore Verbinski? I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, that sounds really familiar. Who's Gore Verbinski?
He directed, most famously, he directed Mouse Hunt with Nathan Lane.
Okay.
He also did Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay. All right.
The Ring.
All right.
Other big movies.
Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, but he directed another movie in 2005 that was written by a guy named Steve Conrad called The Weatherman.
Okay.
With Nicolas Cage. You ever heard of this movie?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I saw it in the theater. Here's the thing. I hate The Weatherman. I hated it so much. I thought it was pretentious, meandering crap, and I really just hated it. And it's not often that I hate a movie, but I really hated it. Steve Conrad ended up being the writer on Secret Life of Walter Mitty with Gore Verbinski set to direct.
There you go.
So they were going to reunite to recapture the magic with Sacha Baron Cohen, who of course dropped out.
All right.
And then in 2011, Ben Stiller was announced to star in it.
Yeah.
And then at some point within the next year or two, Verbinski dropped out. Ben Stiller said, "I am myself a director. I will direct it." So it finally
direct myself.
It finally. Here's the deal.
I'll make the ultimate sacrifice.
Every other time Ben Stiller has directed himself, I have enjoyed it. So that to me is a surefire thing.
It's funny. I don't know how. I guess this is a tangent. How do you direct yourself in a movie?
I don't know. Should we call up Kenneth and ask him how he does it?
And Mel.
Yeah.
Should we ask Mel? It sounds very hard.
I just think Kenneth Branagh directs the hell out of himself.
Yeah. I mean, Kenneth Branagh, but I think that's the problem, right? Like, you really...
He's a little over-directed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have the ego to direct yourself, you also probably need someone to rein you in.
Yeah.
Like, it's like people, the very people who want to go into politics are the very ones who probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
My only experience with this is when in 2013, I directed a production of Measure for Measure. We had done, I think, 1 weekend worth of performances out of 3. And the second weekend, the young woman who was playing the lead, Isabella, she had like a terrible family emergency, like someone died. And she was like, I can't perform. And
which makes sense.
They were like, should we cancel the performance?
Did you have an understudy?
No, it's community theater. You don't have an understudy in community theater.
You don't have some kind of fallback plan?
No.
Oh.
Do you know what the fallback plan was?
Oh, you.
This kid.
Yeah.
I had to go on. It was literally the actor's nightmare.
I mean, that's the most Lipshavian thing I've ever heard.
Thank you. I really appreciate that callback. I had to go on. I had to have the costume altered because I was shorter and fatter than her.
I'm sure you were fine.
I had to carry an iPad with the script. It was embarrassing.
I still remember there was a show I remember from my high school where there was this one character who was reading a newspaper the entire time because they were an understudy and had to be carrying the script. There's so many ways to hide a script.
I still have dreams about it because I literally last night had a dream that there was like a play because that's the actor's this is a trope. The actor's nightmare.
Yes.
You have to go on in a play that you have not rehearsed or prepared for. And at least I knew the blocking because I had invented the blocking because I was the director.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you still forgot it occasionally.
Yeah, I mean they just sort of like shoved me where I needed to go. And I knew a lot of the lines because it was Shakespeare, right? So like it sort of gets ingrained in your head. I still can't believe I had to do that. That was crazy.
But okay, that was fun that you got to tell that whole story.
Yeah,
because it's a good story.
It is a good story.
But that wasn't the plan.
It was not the plan. But that's what I'm saying. It wasn't the plan. We didn't plan it that way. It was an emergency.
Well, Stiller didn't plan to direct himself, but then he ended up having to do it.
Also, I feel like I was expecting people to tell me I did a good job, and I didn't get as much praise as I thought I would. And
I mean, if anything's Lipshavian, that's Lipshavian.
I think it was quite an achievement to go on stage and act in a role that you're not prepared for at a moment's notice.
I'm sure everyone was very proud of you.
I appreciate that.
Okay, 2013. Ben Stiller directs himself from the script by Steve Conrad in the remake of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Stars Ben Stiller as Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig, Shirley MacLaine, a whole bunch of good people are in it.
Yeah.
And I never saw this movie ever.
Yeah.
I remember the
trailer last night.
You couldn't like escape the trailer. Like I feel like the trailer and the commercials, because visually it's a very interesting looking movie. It certainly calls attention to itself.
Yeah.
I feel like it got advertised like crazy in 2013.
Yeah.
But I did not see it.
Yeah.
And I always thought, you know what? It seems like an interesting movie because the impression that I got from it, because like I don't remember any of the commercials ever telling you what it was about other than it's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which as I think a lot of people knew meant, it's a guy who imagines things.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that you see in the commercials was all of the fantasies that he has.
Yeah.
Which like this is a cool way for Ben Stiller to play like different characters and stuff like that. Which I will go on record and say that I will always love Ben Stiller as a character. It's when Ben Stiller is just like a guy, that's when I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care at all. So like Meet the Parents, just don't call me if you want to watch Meet the Parents.
I don't want to watch Meet the Parents.
I'm fine.
I didn't realize
totally fine.
This came out in 2013. As I say, I was busy in 2013.
Sure.
So this passed me by apparently.
We met in 2013.
I know, but very late 2013. We met the day after Christmas.
Yeah, that's fair. So, okay. What I thought this movie was going to be and the vibe that I was getting from it and have gotten from it for years is that this is the thing that I think I would have expected with an adaptation of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is it's actually a pretty low-stakes story in terms of the reality.
Yeah.
But we get to see what's happening inside this guy's head where everything is really high stakes. And we're doing something that is, like a big budget Hollywood movie, but it's actually a pretty small movie.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty small story. And I kind of dig when that happens. And it doesn't happen very often. It happens less often now than it ever did before.
Yeah.
Though, honestly, this isn't the first time it's come up in this episode, but the one it reminded me of is Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah.
Where you have something that is it feels very indie. And I don't mean just that there's a lot of Arcade Fire on the soundtrack.
Even though there was.
There was, yeah. But like it feels very independent. It's got that spirit about it, but it is like a big budget Hollywood movie with a lot of special effects in it.
Yeah.
But it's very personal and very small scale.
Yeah. I got very excited at one point because it was they were at the 125th Street subway stop in New York City, and I thought I could see my building where I used to live.
Did
but
you
then
still
I was
live in New York?
I lived in New York. I was very excited because I thought I saw the building where I used to live, and then I was like, I don't think that is it. And then I think the whole thing was CGI anyway, because remember, he like dives off of the subway station to like save a dog from a burning building or whatever. Mm-hmm. But so he has this fantasy.
He has a secret life, if you will,
a secret life. But what is his real job?
His real job is he is a negative asset manager at Life magazine.
Yeah.
He manages the negatives.
Yeah.
Because now Life magazine famous for their photos.
This whole movie almost seemed like a commercial for Life magazine.
Therein lies one of my many problems with this movie.
Yeah.
So can I lay out like my first of many problems?
Sure.
This movie is tied very, very closely to real things.
Yes.
Life magazine, for example,
a real thing.
It is a real thing that exists, and
it
used to exist. The brand still exists,
yeah.
and you still see commemorative issues of things that have the Life branding on it. But like, it's a real thing from the real world.
Yeah.
Reference throughout the movie is Papa John's.
Yeah.
The chain, and I think KFC is referenced too. Like
the play Grease.
Right? There's references to real things. But the movie doesn't take place in the real world.
Right.
It's a very unrealistic movie.
Yeah.
Tonally. Which, like, is fine. Like, I have no problem with a movie crafting its own reality. But it's weird when you have a movie that is so clearly intent on not existing in reality, continually tying itself and reminding you of things that do exist in reality.
Well, yeah, and it is this weird push and pull because, as you say, like it doesn't exist in the real world in terms of things that are feasible, but like it is grounded so specifically. He works at a real magazine. Mm-hmm. He works in the Time Life building, which is a real building in New York City, which is a real city
where you used to live.
Where I lived in New York, but like it has that problem that a lot of movies do, that like there are office and business scenes being written by people who have never worked in an office a day in their lives.
Yeah.
But it's not heightened enough that you don't care. So it's like, oh, this woman just started working here a month ago, but it seems like she never actually has to be in the building. She can just like leave whenever she wants. And like it's a very formal office, but you never see anybody doing any actual work. And
everyone's going to lose their jobs because of a merger, but everyone's super chill all the time.
Chill, and like some people wear suits to work, and like
some people don't,
and like the women don't, but the women aren't dressed the way that women would dress in an office where men wore suit and ties every day to work. And Adam Scott has a fake beard that I thought was going to be Chekhov's fake beard. Like I swear to God, I was waiting for that thing to get ripped off like the whole movie, and it never did.
Just a fake beard
for some reason, because his two other suits both have beards, but those were not fake beards. Those were real beards. But I think the problem that I think you were sort of circling around and that you identified,
I wasn't circling, I zeroed right in on it.
This guy is supposed to be nothing, right? This guy is supposed to be a nothing guy.
A nothing guy who is defined by his dreams of being someone.
But he's nothing.
But he's no one.
This guy lives in New York City. Which is cool.
That's not nothing.
It's not nothing. He lives in Manhattan. He lives on 125th Street, which is a cool subway stop. Like they're making it like 125th Street stop to live there is like you live in nowhere. Like 125th Street is a cool spot. He has a mom and a sister that he's super close to.
Yeah, his mom's great.
His sister's like a lot.
She's
but
an actor.
Great.
You know,
like
she's a little overbearing, but
she's
great.
Kathryn Hahn. She's great. Apparently, money is no object because they're moving the mom into like a retirement home, and it's going to cost like $5,000 a month. And he's like, sign her up. It's fine.
Money's a little bit of an object.
Yeah.
Like they have to sell a piano, which has to do with another theme of the movie that we'll come back to.
But his dad did die, so that's
which
sad.
Is the other
that's
theme of the movie that we'll come back to.
I think this is where the rubber hits the road. He has a job that people would murder for.
Yeah.
Like he has a really cool job in publishing. Mm-hmm. He works he's the negative assets manager. He works with photographs for a photography magazine.
Yeah, like if you told anyone who knew anything about that world and you said this is what I do, that's a job where people are like, would you come talk at a thing? Could I interview?
Yeah, what an interesting job. And also the other thing, by the way, he loves it.
Yeah.
He loves his job.
He's really good at it, and he loves it. He's been doing it for 16 years. And they're saying the 16 years thing like it's, he's been stuck for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, no, he did the thing that everyone wants, which is he found a job he loves.
This is not Harvey Pekar working as a file clerk in a hospital for 35 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is a man who loves his job and has a cool job. That is a cool job.
Reference.
Like, thank you. Like he's an archivist.
Yeah.
Like that's such a fucking cool job. I would love that job.
I know.
Maybe that's why I'm emphasizing this enough, just to like sit in silence.
So everything you're describing, he lives in a cool place, has a job that people would kill for, that he has been doing for a really long time. He's developed a relationship with what this story is telling us is one of the most famous photographers in the world.
He's also got a great friend who he works with every day.
A great friend who loves him and worships him at work. He's a cool, interesting person, but we are told from the very beginning that he is not a cool, interesting person.
He's having trouble dating.
Because he's on. Well, he goes on eHarmony,
which is a real thing.
That's another thing where it's like eHarmony is a real thing. Like I almost wish this movie.
Also, in 2013, no one uses eHarmony. Yeah. They're all on OkCupid.
This movie needed to like shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
It either needed to say, this is not the real world. We're crafting our own reality, and we're going to make up a dating site. We're going to make up a magazine. Clearly, the dating site is eHarmony. Clearly, the magazine is inspired by Life magazine. Clearly, the restaurant chain is inspired by Papa John's. But, like, we're going to make up our own stuff because it's not reality.
Yeah.
Or they could have said, you know what? No, the real life, the quote-unquote real life parts of the movie, we're going to make them as real as possible and mundane as possible. But the problem is this movie is beautiful.
Yeah.
This is a beautifully shot movie. They try to make a distinction between how the fantasy is shot and the reality is shot.
But they can't help themselves.
What they really comes down to is the fantasy is like a little more saturated than the reality is. But it's all shot quote unquote beautifully.
Yeah.
Like I actually think I just heard from a friend of mine who was telling me that like the thing they loved most about the movie was the cinematography. Like to me, the cinematography is actually one of the things holding this movie back.
Yeah.
Because it's not serving to tell the story in any way.
Yeah. I mean, about halfway through, he takes off on an adventure.
Well, that's so can I just describe what gets us there really quick?
Sure.
So the whole thing is Life is going to get dissolved. It's going to turn into a website, which is kind of what actually happened, like years before the movie came out.
Yeah.
And there's going to be one more issue, and he has just received a set of negatives from Sean O'Connell, this world-famous photographer. And Sean says, "Hey, you've got the next cover of Life magazine in this. It's negative number 25." And he goes up to a big meeting, and there's all the guys, and Adam Scott is there, and he's saying, "Hey, everyone, we're shutting it down. Next issue's the last issue. But, you know, at least, hey, you said Sean O'Connell just sent in some stuff, right? We got the cover? We got the cover for it? That's great." And he goes and looks, and the negative is missing.
Yep.
Oh, no. And he lies and says he has it. But instead, what he needs to do is he needs to find Sean O'Connell and get the negative.
It's a scavenger hunt.
Which is a scavenger hunt. And Sean has sent him this very sweet... They clearly have a relationship, even though they've never met. Because he's Sean's guy at Life magazine.
Yeah.
And Sean sent him this thing saying, like, "Hey, I got the cover of this next issue of Life." And he also sent him a wallet that had, like, the Life motto.
The Life motto was in it so much. Is that the real Life
I think so.
motto? Because that's what made it feel like an ad for Life magazine.
Yeah.
Because they were so like obsessed with this motto. Remember when he was going on the journey, it was like visually shown?
Yes.
It was very Wes Anderson, by the way. But like
not even
visually though it was. Not like tonally.
I thought it was more like Edgar Wright or something like that, like actually putting words on screen
that
or
makes
something.
Sense.
Like Wes Anderson does the whole like symmetrical.
Yeah.
That kind of like very
photograph, like sort of
right.
like almost like a still photo.
Yeah, but not like abstract.
Yeah. Anyway.
like Sean sends him this letter that says like, hey, if you want to see this, look inside. And he thinks, oh, he's telling me I got to look inside myself. Oh, this is going to come back. And he decides, I got to go find Sean and I'll do it. So then the adventure starts. I'm so sorry. Please.
Okay, so
continue.
anyway, but just one thing you've left out. In the meantime, he has met this woman who he is attracted to.
Yep.
He is trying to track her down on eHarmony, despite the fact that they work together and he knows her, which is a little baffling.
They've met at work, but he's stalking her on eHarmony.
He's stalking her on eHarmony, and he is engaged in a support call with Patton Oswalt from eHarmony. This does come back around at the end.
Because many times throughout the movie, he talks to Todd at eHarmony.
Yeah. And so about halfway through the movie, he's got these photos. It's like a puzzle. And one of the photos is the name of a ship in it, and it's like it's too late in time to say like you can't just Google something, so they have to put all of this friction into like how long it takes to Google something. She's like, oh, I'm on my phone and it's like not working. It's buffering. Like, hang on. And so that gives him the opportunity to meet her son that's into skate. Oh, by the way, he's a really great skateboarder.
He's a really good skateboarder and like loved doing it when he was younger and is really good and immediately impresses this kid who's into skateboarding.
Yeah.
Yet another thing that makes him an interesting person.
Yeah. It turns out that it's this ship that's like out of Greenland. So he's like, I'm going to take my life in my hands. I'm going to go on this trek. And he gets on a plane and he goes to Greenland.
Now, hang on. I have a question for you.
Yeah. And it's like this beautiful sequence. Like you see the plane and you see the motto of Life magazine, like on the runway and in the sky and on the side of the plane. So it's like very beautiful, like abstract sequence, like very heightened sequence as he gets on the plane and flies to Greenland.
But wait a second.
Here's the problem.
I got to understand this. So we've been told up until this point that he is a very meek person who has never done anything interesting and is afraid of the world and of women.
Yes.
He's afeared of women.
He's afeared of women.
So it must be like a really big moment for him to overcome his natural inclination to not do exciting things to get on this plane, right?
No. He buys a ticket and goes.
He just goes to the airport and buys a ticket
No,
and goes.
and you do see his like accounting for the amount that the ticket costs.
Okay.
Because that ties back to the first scene where he's like doing an accounting.
But that to me feels like it's a really big thing for someone unadventurous to do.
It should literally be the last shot of the movie, which is him deciding to get on a plane and going on an adventure. Instead, it happens halfway through.
Or the beginning of the third act.
Or whatever. But so at that point, again, it's beautiful and it's fun and it was fun to watch. But we just kept turning to each other and going like, I actually don't know if this is actually happening right now. Is this how I'm supposed to feel? Am I supposed to feel that he's like going to wake up at any minute and this is all the fantasy? Like at what point does this become the fantasy? So he gets to Greenland.
Because the fantasies we've seen at this point have been these very like cartoony violent scenes and he's had big fights and explosions. Like we've seen fantasies. We've seen things that have been fantasies up until this point.
Yeah. So
but they're shot the same as reality.
Yeah. So he gets to Greenland and he finds out that the boat is out on the sea, but there's a supply helicopter that sometimes goes out and he meets the guy that's the pilot. And the pilot's like really drunk and he's like, hey, I'm going to fly out there. And Ben Stiller's like, no, I'm not going to get on a helicopter.
Was Walter Mitty.
Walter Mitty's like, I'm not going to get on
Ben Stiller says nothing in this movie.
I'm not going to get in the helicopter in the North Atlantic with a really, really drunk pilot. And then Kristen Wiig shows up and sings Space Oddity. And so this is like, okay, well, this is the fantasy, but I'm not sure where it began and where it's ending. Clearly, this is fantasy.
I have so many problems with this.
Okay.
Because she starts singing, Major Tom, all that kind of stuff. And this is what inspires him to run out of the bar and jump onto the helicopter with the drunk pilot.
Yeah.
And it's shot in slow motion and it's dramatic. And there's nothing. This isn't that much crazier than
what he already did.
Than what he already did.
Yeah.
So already I had a problem with the fact that the movie is telling me that this is more dramatic than the thing that happened before.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Making the decision to go in the first place. It's like, okay, well, now I'm here.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I have to chase this thing down.
But the other thing is, if we go back to the original text, if we are inspired by the original text...
Well, let us consult the text.
The thing the original text tells us is that Walter Mitty's fantasies center on one person. Who do they center on?
Walter Mitty.
Walter Mitty. He's always the hero of his own dreams. But in this fantasy, she comes in and sings a song to him and that inspires him. That's not Mitty-esque. That's just a guy imagining a lady he has a crush on.
Yeah.
That's something everyone has done. That's not unique to him. He's not imagining himself to be someone more interesting and someone braver. It bothers me because that type of daydream has nothing to do with Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
He's just imagining things. But that Walter Mitty isn't a guy that just imagines things. He doesn't just have an active imagination. He has a very specific type of active imagination. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
I know I'm being pedantic, which is why I think you would be picking up what I'm saying.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. So he gets out to this boat, and then it like is almost like the Alec Baldwin scene in Hunt for Red October, where he has to jump off of the helicopter onto the boat. And I was like, but then it's like, okay, is this reality? Is this reality, or is he dreaming? Because he would have died if it's reality.
Yeah. Also, everyone's very funny, and he's having a conversation from the middle of the ocean with the captain who would never be able to hear him.
Yeah.
And there's a funny thing with a shark.
Yeah.
It really, it felt to me like
and
Danny
a
Kaye. Yeah, it felt to me like Danny Kaye in the original, where like we have these things that are objectively funny that have nothing to do with the story, and they're taking me out of the momentum of it. This has that too. There's some really funny stuff in this movie that's just fun Ben Stiller type humor that I don't think has any place in this story and just ruins the momentum. And this one's closer to 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, but he doesn't die. So they bring him on the ship. And, so the reason they went out there was because they were trying to deliver radio parts to the ship. And he accidentally dropped them in the water when he was almost drowned. And so then they're like, oh, yeah, this guy you're looking for, he was here, but we dropped him off in Iceland. And Ben Stiller's like, oh, can we go to Iceland? He's like, they're like, yeah, this was the thing that was genuinely incredibly funny.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, we have to because you dropped our radio parts at the bottom of the ocean.
Like I understand that explaining a joke makes it funnier.
It was really funny.
So you're welcome, everybody.
It was really funny.
But like that's a joke. That's humor. That actually comes from the plot.
Yeah.
That comes from the plot and the character interactions. It's not just something that is funny. It is something that is plot driven and funny, which I think is always so much better.
So they get to Iceland and he's trying to find this.
There's a volcano.
And he gets rescued from the volcano. That's the other thing, right? He doesn't rescue someone from a volcano. He himself is rescued from a volcano. He gets a skateboard off a kid and he steals a bicycle.
And he does this awesome skateboarding scene because he's a great skateboarder.
Yeah.
Like Walter Mitty is a cool, interesting person, and nothing this movie can tell me will convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
Because he's a cool, interesting person.
So he thinks he sees the guy trying to photograph a volcano, but by that time he's already gone. And so then he just ends up back in New York, right? He just goes home.
He just gives up and goes home.
He just gives up and goes home.
And then he goes to Afghanistan.
And then he's at his mom's house, and he realizes that one of the pictures is a picture of like a very close-up picture of the
one of the pictures from the roll of film that is missing a picture.
Yeah. And he's like, Mom, did you... So anyway, his mom is basically the Deus Ex Machina who's like, yeah, I talked to your friend.
Yeah, Sean was here.
He was here.
Sean O'Connell, played by Sean Penn, and I feel like it's definitely feeding into that whole, like, the myth of Sean Penn.
Yeah.
Like, Sean Penn is, to me, is like, he's two things. He's Spicoli and a very talented, but also at the same time very pretentious actor.
Yeah.
He's not this amazing person.
But I can see what this movie was trying to do by like tying all these little clues together, because okay, so when he talks to Kristen Wiig at the beginning, she's like, yeah, I'm taking this class about like writing a mystery novel. And like what they say is you have to like write backwards and you sort of scatter the clues, but then everything makes sense by the end. So like it's kind of hanging a lantern on it am I right?
Yeah, it is. That's hanging a lantern on it. Good job.
Because like, so when he's on the Icelandic ship, he's like, oh, this is clementine cake. This is like my mom makes this type of cake. And then you find out later from the mom that she baked Sean O'Connell a cake that he gave to it was his mom's cake because Sean O'Connell took it and gave it to the Icelandic sailors, but it had like a clue written on the wax paper that it was wrapped in or what have
like
you.
Where he was going to be next.
Yeah.
Which is in Afghanistan.
So he just like somehow gets to Afghanistan.
After he throws away the wallet because he's mad at
He throws away
Sean.
the wallet because he's mad. He treks all the way through Afghanistan. He's become an extremely interesting person by doing all of these things.
By the way, quick thing. Did you know that Iceland, Greenland, and Afghanistan in this movie are all Iceland? Because as we all know, Greenland is full of ice, but Iceland
is very nice.
It is very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, D2 the Mighty Ducks.
There you go. Yeah, honestly, like one of the more unrealistic things were the scenes in Iceland where it was assumed that people from Iceland wouldn't speak English because they
but they all do speak English.
They do speak perfect English.
Yeah.
But
that was very realistic. He thinks they won't, but they do.
No, they don't. Remember when the guy's screaming at him in Icelandic and he doesn't understand?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Is the whole, and the kids don't speak any English? Like,
yeah. That's
I guess
true. No, you're right.
Someone who knows Iceland, correct me. I imagine in the more rural areas, perhaps people don't speak English like they perhaps do in Reykjavik. But
he trades a kid like a Stretch Armstrong doll for a really nice longboard.
It's a bad trade.
Like it's a terrible trade. Like no kid would do that.
So anyway, he finally tracks down this guy that he's looking for in the remote mountains of Afghanistan, looking at snow leopards, and he's like, "Yeah, I bet you really love that negative I sent you, right?" And he's like, "No, I'm
like, we're spoiling this right now if you haven't seen it, but it is really unsatisfying.
It is not satisfying
at all, and
because he has to just explain it. No, he doesn't find anything out for himself. He just has to be told what the deal was.
It turns out there was no meaning behind the journey.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like if
you had it all, it was within you all along.
If I put on my film school hat, I can find meaning. The meaning is he thought it was the external forces that were driving his journey, but it was really the internal forces. It was really who he was as a person that was driving him all around the world. It wasn't Sean leading him on an adventure. Sean put the negative in the wallet, and when he wrote him the note saying "look inside," it didn't mean look inside yourself. It meant look inside the wallet, and there's the picture.
Yeah, it's the plot of The Wizard of Oz. If you recall, she had the shoes, she had the power in herself the entire time. All she had to do was click her heels together three times and say there's no place like home. But she had to go on a journey in order to understand herself better in order to get there. But she could have done it at any time.
Yeah, but like at least Dorothy has that moment near the end of the movie where she realizes that.
Yes.
Walter never has that.
Sure.
Like, he kind of becomes a cooler, more confident person at the end.
Yeah.
But he never really has any kind of self-awareness of that.
Yeah.
Walter didn't feel like a character to me through this movie. He felt like three versions of different characters that never connected to each other.
So anyway, there's the evil boss and there's Kristen Wiig.
So he goes back
and he thought that she got back together with her ex-husband, but it turns out she didn't, and they're in love.
He goes to her front door to give her kid the skateboard that he traded a Stretch Armstrong doll
in
for
Iceland. On the slopes of an active volcano.
Her ex opens the door, and
it's not her ex. It's someone who was there fixing the sink.
No, her ex was there fixing the sink.
No,
fixing the fridge.
No. She's like, "Oh, that's Peter, my cousin."
Did she say cousin?
Yeah, or her brother. It's not her ex. Her ex's name is Richard. They're both named, her son and her ex are both named Richard, and that guy's name was Peter.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
It does not matter, but I'm just saying it's not her ex.
But like, the only thing that matters is he assumes it's her ex, and he assumes they're back together.
Yes.
And this man who has just gone to Greenland on a whim, jumped onto a drunk man's helicopter,
traded a Stretch Armstrong,
dived into the ocean, skateboarded down a mountain. This man has done all of these things.
Trekked through Afghanistan.
We are given to understand that he is too scared to wait a minute and talk to her because he likes her and he thinks this is her ex and they're getting back together.
Yes.
So he leaves and goes to Afghanistan.
Oh, right. He hasn't been to Afghanistan yet. Yeah. So now we're back to like
he's not brave enough to do that, but he is brave enough to go to Afghanistan, which again, if I put on my film school hat, I can hear myself saying, no, but that's the point. Don't you get it? That's the point. But he can't bring up the courage to talk to a person, but he can do all these amazing things. He just has to figure. That to me is unsatisfying and bullshit.
It's very unsatisfying because basically what we've sort of dialed it down to is the plot where all conflict is caused by people being too scared to talk to each other, which is really unsatisfying and very cliche and very boring.
Yes.
What is it like that? Like I've heard this before. It's talking about like Woody Allen movies specifically, but versus like it's like a Christian plot is that people are too scared to talk to each other, and a Jewish plot is that they tell each other too much. Is that
that's good?
Something worse to that effect.
I appreciate that. I've never heard that. It's very good.
Yeah, something like that.
So he's back,
and then they're walking down the street, and he's like, finally brings up the courage. So now they're not at cross purposes. He's like, I thought you were back together with your ex, and she's like, no, I am not. Great, we have now communicated. And
she's always been super into him.
She's into him,
which makes perfect sense because he's a very
a
very interesting, cool person.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, we should find out," because they're both fired, right, from this magazine. But he did give them the negative, but he doesn't know what it was. He just kind of threw the little packet at them.
And I was worried that one of the things the movie was going to do is like the photo was going to be like what Bill Murray whispers to Scarlett Johansson at the end of Lost in Translation.
Yeah, unclear.
Like, just unclear. And I will say,
we do see the photo.
We do see the photo. I, not even grudgingly, I full-throatedly endorse this as a great choice. I kind of loved this.
Yeah, and this is a hard line to walk because we've talked about this before, like the way that you depict a piece of art that you want the audience to believe is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've talked about it with like in A Star Is Born, right? Like the person genuinely has to be a very good singer and actor because we have to understand that they're very, very good. Or in anything where there's like a poem or a painting or something that we have to understand is so very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not very good. A lot of times it's with a poem that someone's like very touched by a poem and we're like, that poem is not good.
Yeah.
In this case, I think I would agree with you. It is a very beautiful photograph.
Well, so I want to set this up and describe it because this was one of the things I loved in this movie. But one of the things that Sean tells him at the beginning in his letter is that this photo I took is the quintessence of life.
Yeah.
And he takes that to mean, he always misinterprets Sean's letter. He takes that to mean it's the quintessence of the concept of life.
Yes. And that's part of the motto.
Right. But really what he means is it's the quintessence of Life magazine.
Yeah.
Like he's being very literal with it. Because what it is it's a picture he took surreptitiously of Walter outside the Time Life building sitting on a fountain, like in black and white. And it's the guy who's the negative asset manager at Life magazine, a famous photo magazine, looking at a contact sheet of negatives.
With his like special glasses on, right? His loops. It looks very cool and retro and classic because he's dressed like with the short sleeve button up, but with a skinny tie.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks very timeless.
Yeah.
It's a cool looking photo.
It's one of those things. It's kind of thing where like I hear someone release a song where I go, oh, this song is like, this should have been a classic from the 60s.
Yeah.
But it was only just written and recorded last year.
Yeah, like the photo could have been from the 50s to
yeah,
today.
They easily could have actually like gone back in time and stolen a real thing and brought it forward.
Yeah.
Like it actually, and it worked for being the last issue of Life magazine.
Yeah.
It worked. And that I think deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah.
But can we talk about themes for a second?
Sure.
Okay. I found a website that, and not even that this is like the end all be all, but it went through what are the themes of the Secret Life of Walter Mitty 2013. Here's what it lists: imagination, corporate life, adventure,
corporate life,
layoffs and stuff like that.
Sure.
Love, accidents and coincidences, loss, self-expression. Like the thing is, yes, this movie is trying to do all of these at once. This movie is never about anything because it's trying to be about everything.
Well, and the whole thing with his dad dying, like that could be the movie in and of itself, is just his journey about his dad, but it's almost more of an afterthought that like, oh, my dad died and like it was really hard for a while.
Like I'm going to give an example of something. I'm going to call back to a filmmaker I just mentioned, Edgar Wright. Okay. I like Edgar Wright. I like some of his movies. Hot Fuzz. You've seen it.
Yeah.
For people that haven't seen it, it's about a cop who goes to a small town and he finds out that there's some shit going on. And it's a big play on like big Michael Bay action movies. And it's really fun and really funny. And the central relationship of the movie is between this guy and this other cop that he meets. And it's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And they become best friends. And it's basically a love story, but it ends with these two guys becoming best friends.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's kind of pretty well known about the making of the movie is that originally in their story, there was a love interest for the main character. And so there were multiple plots going around. So not only was he establishing this friendship with this guy, Danny, but he was also establishing a love relationship with a lady. And the thing they realized was, oh, this is making it too complicated and it's just adding stuff. The thing that's most important is the relationship he has with this other guy.
Yeah.
So let's just drop her. That's fine. And let's focus the movie. And I think it makes the movie a lot better.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite examples of where you actually can chart like how a movie progressed in its development. This is one of those ones where like they needed to pick something.
Yeah.
Pick 2 or 3 of these themes and focus on them. Because the whole thing about him losing his dad when he's 17, it's mentioned a few times. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really drive any of the plot.
No, it really doesn't, other than like, well, this is why I didn't fulfill my dreams that I had, because when I was 17, I had to cut my hair and get to work and work at Papa John's and all this stuff. But like, again, like, his job is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I just keep coming back to. His life is so cool. And it's not even a question of like, wow, he had this great life and he couldn't even see it. Like, it seems like the movie is trying to make us think like, no, his life is not very cool.
Yeah.
But it is really cool.
Right. But also, the thing about Walter Mitty, it wasn't that like, I used to be someone cool and then I had to give up being cool to be real. He was never anyone.
Yeah.
He legitimately was no one and always dreamed about being someone. This is a different person. This isn't Walter Mitty. This is a guy who had like a really cool childhood, had to give up some of the things he was passionate about to get a job, ended up finding something really cool that he was passionate about, but was afeared of women. Like, that's this character.
Yeah.
And I don't see how that's Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even the Danny Kaye Walter Mitty. Like, the Danny Kaye Walter Mitty is closer to the Walter Mitty in the story than this is.
No, I do agree with that.
And it's not about any of them enough. Like, the corporate stuff and the layoffs and corporate culture, like, it's kind of about those things, but not in any way that's anything more than superficial.
Yeah.
So it's unsatisfying.
Well, perhaps we should leave it at that.
All right. Do you want to do some quadrants?
Yeah, let's do it.
1947. Do you think they cared about the source material, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No.
I don't think Goldwyn did.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, people cared about it.
Yeah, but no.
It was well known.
Yeah,
I don't think they did. Was it successful?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like as a movie, yeah.
Yes and
no.
It's right on the line because like it depends on how you're looking at it.
Sure.
If you're looking at it as a fan of Danny Kaye, it is a successful Danny Kaye movie. I don't think it's a successful movie.
Yeah.
But you can say that about a lot of things.
Sure.
Okay, 2013. Do you think they cared about The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
No. I don't think they cared either about the short story or the original movie, honestly. I think they just kind of like the idea. It went through so many iterations.
Yeah.
Like by the time it got to this point, they
just wanted to get it out the door.
They just wanted to get out the door. Yeah, no, they didn't care.
I think
this was not like a Ben Stiller passion project.
No. But like I have this inkling that like Steve Conrad convinced himself that he cared about the original source material.
I guess.
But like I don't think he did.
So.
Was it successful?
No. I would not say so, no.
No. There's some funny stuff in it and like there's some good parts in it. There's like it's not bad.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff in it. I just think ultimately it's not successful.
Yeah.
Well, this is a bummer of an episode.
Yeah, I mean, let's wrap it up.
I like when we love stuff. This has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. The show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapt or Perish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
This movie is not very quotable. Bye, everybody.